Welcome to the Families of Character Show. I'm your host, Jordan Langdon, and as a wife, mom, and licensed clinical social worker, you get practical parenting stories, research-based parenting solutions, and most of all, support. Lean in and let yourself be inspired and reminded of the gifts you have as a parent. Let's jump right in.
Check, baby. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to the show, parents. This is Jordan Langdon, and I have my husband on the show here today. So welcome, Josh.
Well, thank you for having me, Jordan.
Thank you for the sound check. It was just perfect.
Yeah, you're very welcome. That's what I do.
And so your style, and you just bring the cheese, you bring the humor to this family. Like, that's what we need. We need that from you.
Well, I do try. That is for sure.
Guys, Josh and I have been married for 19 years. We just celebrated 19 years of marriage, and we have been through it. We've been through the good, the bad, the ugly. I just figured I'd give a little preview of kind of the 19 years, and feel free to jump in along the way.
All right.
We married in Texas. Once we started having children, we decided we got to move. We got to get closer to our parents. So I remember us orchestrating a move from Texas to Colorado, and we were very strategic about it. I think it was the first time we ever had a Langdon family meeting where we sat down with a notebook. And I think you were in heaven because there were spreadsheets involved and
3-ring binder.
Yeah.
I made a cover for the 3-ring binder that said
Team Langdon.
Team Langdon, Colorado move or something like that. Yeah,
yes.
That was fantastic.
It was very specific. And we would meet kind of on a weekly basis to go over our plans and figure out, what we needed to do and what we had just done and how far off track or on track we were to make this thing happen, because we really wanted to get closer to our parents so that our kids could grow up around their grandparents. And man, we made it happen.
We did make it happen. It was an interesting process of successes and failures and moving forward and adjusting. Look back on it, it didn't seem nearly as tough after we've been here in Colorado for 13 years. It seemed like a pretty easy move, but that wasn't the case at the beginning. I know that. That's
so true. In the moment, it's like, taking risks, and both of us gave up our jobs. I gave up my private practice as a counselor down there in Richardson, Texas, and you were working at Verizon or WorldCom or MCI or whatever it was.
I think by that time it was Verizon Business is where it was.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay.
Same seat, multiple companies.
There you go. And we just said, this is what we want to do, and we'll kind of figure out the rest once we get to Colorado. And that was a big risk.
It was. It was almost giving me reliving the anxiety.
I know. It's like, what were we thinking? Actually, we need to go back and harness some of that courage, I think, because we can get wrapped around the wheel about decisions that we make in life. But when you look back, maybe towards the beginning of your marriage or the beginning of family life, and realize what types of decisions you really did make as a family and the risks that you took and, the outcomes, it's like, you know what? We shouldn't take ourselves quite so seriously or maybe we do take ourselves seriously because we did organize that move and we were very strategic about our plans in it. And so I don't know. It's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think that there's one of the lessons to be learned from that is probably we've made a decision. And it was a full-on 100% decision to move to get closer to family. So we kind of knew our what and our why we were doing something, and then the how. That was a process of having conversations and figuring out things. So I'm not sure that it was as much courageous as it was just we had already made up our minds to make that move happen, and so it was more of an execution of a decision. Maybe looking back, there was some courage associated with it, but it just seemed like this is what we're doing. We better figure it out now.
That's true. And I guess it's true too when you hear people say, you don't have to know how this is going to end up. You just have to know how to take the next step. And that's definitely something that we were committed to, is what's the end game that we want? And then how do we get started and just take the next step? And wow, yeah, you're right. We've been here 13 years in Colorado. So something that we did worked, I guess. So we've been repeating that, really. I guess that worked so well with us. We figured, a weekly family meeting would be something that could work even if we don't have a big decision coming up. And so we've kept that going in different, versions and iterations over the years. And clearly our kids are still super jazzed that they're part of that as well. So
true.
It's also interesting. We've been through 2 miscarriages. We've been through multiple job changes. I've stayed home and I've worked from home, and I've stayed home altogether and taken time off from my job to, raise kids. And you've changed careers, and that's all just been, when you look back over 19 years, like, we have done a lot of different things. We've never just kind of stayed in one zone for too long. And it's just what it's been.
Yeah, I'm glad that we haven't stayed too static. But not just kind of hear you say that. Yeah, we have done a lot. I guess I don't think about it on a day-to-day basis of all the stuff that we have done. So I don't realize everything that we have done. But yeah, we have done a lot. And it's been an enjoyable ride too. It's been fun.
It has, and it's crazy because I don't think, maybe aside from our annual anniversary, we don't maybe spend enough time reflecting back on just the things that we've been through, the accomplishments that we have been able to celebrate as a couple and as a family, and then just, some of the real challenges and the heartbreaks that we've gone through. And so I always look forward to, like, the kids' birthdays or our anniversary, and just because it's a great time to do some reflection and just to stop and look back at the pictures and the memories and just be mindful of all the different places that we've kind of been, literally and figuratively, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate that about you, because I almost to a fault, I don't do that. I'm kind of a forward looker, right? So when it comes to looking at pictures and things like that, maybe I don't spend as much time. So yeah, that is probably a point in our marriage where I could improve, is just looking back and saying, oh, wow, look at what we did accomplish. Look at the joys we did have. I do like it when we actually do it, though. Just thinking about this in my head while you were talking earlier, it's like, I remember staying at family's house when we got up to Denver, and, we were in that bed and Parker was laying on the side of the bed right beside. We had like a bedroom and a bathroom for
3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't super enjoyable at the time. I mean, I was grateful for the people that allowed us to do that, but that was tough. And now I kind of look back on it right now and just a little bit of a smile. That was a challenge.
Oh, yeah. And obviously, we grew from those experiences where now you wouldn't choose that. Like, go stay with someone and have, 100 square feet total to your, to be responsible for and to sleep and
for all of our stuff and all of our people.
Yeah. Like that, you wouldn't choose that. But looking back, it was a great gift to be able to, give up something that was ours and to kind of surrender to the process and just trust that we were there for a short period of time, but that there was good that would come out of it. And there was, you know, it was awesome. We've been able to do that for, other people too, where they've been moving, and then we've decided to, open our home to them. So it's kind of a full circle thing that's come around for us. So that's been really awesome.
It's been fantastic.
Well, what's one thing that stands out to you, I guess, as a husband or a father from a man's perspective, that's kind of, I don't know, just what stuck out over 19 years of being a husband and a dad? Like, what do you think has been one of the, like, some of the most poignant maybe memories that you have of your role in our family?
Oh, that's a great question. I think probably one of the biggest things as a husband or as a father, and as a father, I should say, is the work that it is required to try to be, I don't know, I guess at least decent at these two jobs, right? I'm not sure that I was always the best husband. I know I wasn't always the best husband, and I'm not sure that I was always the best father. So I think probably it's not one memory that sticks out, like, you know, a certain thing, like I guess a birth or something. I think if I really just sit with it for a second, it's probably the process of being a husband and a father, how much different I am now than when we started, you know, this little family of two, and then now we're at five, and, you know, Parker potentially leaving the nest in the next few months, year-ish, year and a half. I mean, I would say that, yeah, it's the work, but it's enjoyable work. It's always been, in retrospect, that the tough things fall away and the enjoyable things, they stick with me. I think I do remember a number of different fun things, but the work, I would say probably.
So by work, are you talking about, because at first when you said the work, you know, I thought, yeah, he's going to talk about like the job and going to work and like the pressure of having to provide for the family, or getting, you know, to provide for the family, and what that takes and how different that can be from, you know, my role as a wife and a mom. But then it sounded like you were saying more, speaking more to the process and kind of the evolving that happens from, you know, year one of marriage to year 19 and year one of being a dad. You've been a dad for 17 years now. So that process, it sounds like, is what you're talking about. It's just the evolution of husband and father over the years. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's the evolution, but it's also just the immediate stuff that happens. Do you remember when Parker was screaming at us like crazy when we were younger in Texas? And then we got him back in the crib, and I had to sleep. I slept on the floor. And then over the course of like 2 weeks, I slowly slept further away from him. I was sleeping in the hallway on the floor of our place in Texas. I think it's things like that. It's not just the work of becoming a better positional husband or father, but it's also the work of the day to day, you know. Yes, that does include actual career, making money type stuff, but also the work of, you know, just serving others. I would preferred not to slept on the floor. So I think it's the work of the daily, you know, grind, if you will. But yeah, I think it's the work. It's both the overall work on myself and the overall work in those roles, and then the day-to-day actions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have a very vivid memory of Parker returning from our parents' house and my sister's house.
Oh, that's right. That's why it was.
He was gone for 3 weeks, folks. And then when he came back, he was just a royal disaster because he had been spoiled. He'd gotten to sleep with everybody every night and probably have sugar and watch movies and just have a great old time. And then it was back to parents, and he was not having it. He couldn't believe that he had to go back and sleep in his room. And it was quite the adjustment for both of us. But my memory of that, yes, you were sleeping on the floor in the hallway, and then in the dining room, which was like halfway between our child's room and our room, and then finally back in the bed. But I remember that night, Parker screaming at the side of our bed, literally for 60 minutes straight, like at the top of his lungs. And what did we do?
We prayed.
We prayed. And we held hands, and we held hands so tight. It was like, don't you dare give in. Do not give in. Now,
we were hanging off a cliff.
Yes.
Like if the one of us would have let go, that would have been a disaster.
Exactly. But you know what? And looking back, that may not have been the best idea to like let him scream it out, right? But we were motivated. We were like, okay, this is what we're deciding to do. We are going to wait this out. And in that moment, it worked. He obviously wore himself out, fell to the ground, and slept beside our bed for that night. And I don't know whether it was, that helped him start sleeping back in his room. I don't think it was, but
probably not our most spectacular parenting moment, but once again, we made a decision and we locked in.
Exactly. And I think that's really been the key, trait for us over the 19 years. It's like, if we can get to the point where we both really go all in and we say, yes, we want to do this, it's on, man. We are going for it. Writing goals down on like a whiteboard that we hung up in our bedroom at our old house. Remember when we first moved here?
Yeah.
We just got this idea, we did this like Langdon family meeting to move from Texas to Colorado, and that seemed to work out, to write things down, to meet on a regular basis. So when we were feeling really overwhelmed with life and we had settled in here and we both had our first kind of Colorado jobs, and they weren't exciting and awesome. I mean, inpatient psych in a hospital setting is never, it's exciting. It's always exciting, but it's not, without stress, that's for sure. And, but we had goals, we wanted to be able to send our kids to great schools, and that was going to mean we were going to have to pay out of pocket to send them there. And we needed a new car, and like we wanted to move to a bigger house that had, enough bedrooms for everyone.
Well, yeah, when we first moved here, we wanted to move to a house.
Well, yes, we needed a house.
Yes.
Yes. But I remember just thinking, like, how are we going to do this? And we just wrote them down on this whiteboard and put it up in our bedroom. And like, we didn't stop and have a conversation beside the whiteboard or do anything like super intentional, but they were there. And I think both of us just walking by them every day when we got ready for work or we're, getting dressed in the morning, it was just top of mind. And that's been something, again, consistent for us, that when we're floundering about and feel like we're off the rails and that we're maybe a little directionless in some ways, it's like, oh, we haven't written anything down. We're thinking of all these things, but we haven't really, written them down or put them in a place where we can both see them and really go after them.
Well, I think when we make those decisions and we come to a place in our mind where we work through it, it's put it on a whiteboard, put it somewhere where it's visible, then we do have more intentionality than we lead on, in the sense that we make probably a lot more little decisions that are pointed towards whatever we're doing. And so I do think that's part of the process, which is when you and I make decisions and then we acknowledge them, we know why we're doing something, then we act pretty good, right? We act so good that we decide not to do it anymore. we should probably get a whiteboard back up and get some good decision made.
Yeah, that's what everyone does. It's something works so well that you stop doing it.
Sure, absolutely.
It's like any good workout plan, right? No, what I remember, back also when our kids were young, probably even as recent as like 6 years ago, when Parker was about 11, I guess Annie would have been 3. So we had a spread of 3 to 11, and you were working, I was working, and, one of the things that habits I got into was just sort of like doing everything for everyone, because in my mind, that was easier. It was quicker. I had more control of our home environment to be able to tidy it up myself. For the few hours I was home in the evenings with the kids, I wanted things to kind of look a certain way and function a certain way. And I just really burnt myself out doing that. And so we've never totally dove into what that was like for you. I think for me, it's embarrassing to look back and just think of how selfish I was during those years in just taking all this on. But it's even more embarrassing to think that, I never checked in with you, much during that time to find out how you were doing, because I think in my own pain and misery so much that I made a lot of assumptions that like life was pretty good for you. You went to the office and came home, and, I was running kids to doctor's appointments and to sports events and working all day too and making meals. And so I just thought like, oh, this guy's got it made. Now I know better looking back, but I mean, what was it like for you in those days to see me doing all of this stuff? And like, how did you think and feel about that, I guess?
Well, I think that's one of the positive and or negative, however you look at it, parts of my personality is as a forward looker, looking towards the future. When you said you were going to do something, I was just like, okay, that's going to get done. So I just would move on and take care of the next thing. And there wasn't a lot of thought about, well, is this what the right way we should be doing things? And I don't think that we were there yet as a couple. And I don't think that was an option for us at that time. It was just, let's kind of keep it together. So for me, I would say that wasn't a big part of the thought process. How I think it manifested is in our interactions, like we were less intimate, both, physically, probably spiritually, intellectually, we were less intimate than what we could have been at the time. And that, I don't know that was your fault for, just doing everything that you did. The idea that I wasn't checking in with you either. Right. So where's my responsibility land in that? To take a step back and to, as the leader of the family, to kind of say, hey, where are we? You seem to be doing a lot, because you were. And so I think there's responsibility on both sides, but I wasn't experiencing this is a struggle for you to do everything, because when you said you were going to do things, you did them.
Man, that is so true. And I think that is the, main theme of this type of encounter between a husband and wife and who are parents, is that mom says, I've got it. I'm just talking to a friend today at brunch, and she was saying the same thing. Like, oh, how many times my husband has offered to help. And I'm like, I've got it. And so this is really a common theme in marriages, right? Where as women, we just say we've got it because we do, and we're used to doing what we're doing, but we're also kind of running this race with ourselves, I think, where we're going like, I've got it. At some days it feels like I'm drowning, but I've got it. And it's this false sense of, I can do all of these things for everyone and still have something left in my cup for the most important people. And so I think what you said from your perspective just draws this out perfectly, because as a man, if I'm telling you that I've got it and I do the next thing towards getting it, whether it's setting up food for the company that we're having coming over, or, running 3 loads of laundry through in a Saturday, or whatever it is, like, if I tell you I've got it, then you believe me.
Yeah. But I also think that that's an issue with guys, in the sense that we say we got it too. Now, it may not be task oriented, getting the kids here and there and everywhere, but as some form of stoicism, or like very, trying to be strong and trying to be the leader. I think a lot of men are out there, especially in the husband role, and probably the father role too, where they're saying, I got it, we're good. And inside, I think this is where a lot of men keep the internal side of it, and we don't have it. Most of the times, we're not really sure. We don't have that surety within ourselves to say, yeah, I can lead this family. I know how and what and why this family needs to go the direction that they do. And so I think the guy side of that story, which I think I have today, I still think I have it. I want to be a good leader. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. And I want to have it, but I don't. And I think that's part of the whole process of growing. That's why I wasn't as good of a father and a husband back then as I am today. And then 10 years from now, I'll look back and kind of be disappointed of where I was on podcast day,
Maybe so. I mean, what I hear you saying is that I guess men and women both have a tendency to say, like, I've got it in our roles.
Yeah. And it manifests itself in very different ways. Because you're getting it through all of the activities. And I would say I would actually say women probably have it in the family unit. Women probably have it more than the guys do. The guys are just, in a general sense, we do hide it because that we want to be the strong ones. We have to have that sense of surety for the family. I want you to have confidence in me. I want the kids to have confidence in me. And by creating a sense of safety and surety, that helps the family move forward. And at times I might not be feeling like I have anything whatsoever, but it doesn't manifest itself in a way that is outward.
And that's so true. And I hesitate to say this, but I appreciate that about you, because as a woman, or I'll just speak for myself, but in our relationship, I appreciate that and I need that.
Sure. Yeah.
I need your confidence. I need your, ability to make decisions. We've talked about in the past. I said, oh my gosh, the most unsexy thing is when your husband will not make a decision and he's wavering back and forth on something. I don't know if we should go with this company or that company. And for me, it just creates a sense of anxiety because you're the rock. At the same time, I can appreciate that you're human. You also weigh the pros and cons of things and you don't know right away what to do about a situation. And that's beautiful. It's okay. I want you to be able to, be in that space and understand that that's where you are in the moment. And so I think it's tricky in relationships to figure out, when do I disclose to my wife or my husband that I'm really struggling in this certain area? And then in that sharing, am I asking for their help or just asking them to be a safe place and a sounding board just for me to kind of let it all out and just kind of let out what I've been processing and where I am and what is keeping me from maybe making a decision or acting in the next way?
Well, yeah, there's always the space of, are we communicating too much about something or not communicating enough? And I think if you look back over our 19 years, probably lack of communication was what I did at the beginning, right? And I have learned to communicate more. Now, I still think I tend on the lack of communication side, right? As she smiles.
And shakes her head. Hey, I over communicate. I use way too many words with this guy. I just drown him in words.
I love you, hon. I do. But with that being said, I think that the part of how we communicate now has created a relationship that is so much better. And how we communicate now is we do kind of separate some of the tasks. We do communicate about how we're feeling and this such in a way that allows us to process some things or to just get things done. Sometimes it's extremely transactional. You do this, I do this. And we've grown over the years in that regard.
Definitely. And I remember a few times when I think both of us have had to be, I don't know if courageous is a word, but we've really had to assert ourselves with the other person in a way that's really wakes up the other one. Like when you said, you know what, you were really not fun to live with. That was really difficult to hear. And at the same time, when you said that at the point when I was burning myself out and resenting everyone and I wasn't fun to live with, it just struck me I needed that honesty. It was a short sentence. It wasn't, and this is why, and this is how I think you got there. It was you are not very fun to live with. And I think we've been generous with each other in those ways. And I say generous because it's out of love, right? You wouldn't have said that to me to cut me down or, pin me in a corner or something like that. It was just you're kind of pushing me. It seemed like I was, I think, kind of pushing you to help me, right, in that situation. And for you to just say, you aren't very fun to live with. That's what I needed in that moment to kind of have this light bulb go off. It was I'm not fun to live with. I don't like living with myself this way. I know I'm driving my kids nuts. I know that, you are like wondering if there's ever going to be intimacy in our life again, and like waving at me through the fog, like, hello, do I exist in your world? So I think that too has been a big part of 19 years of marriage, of just being like kind of brutally honest with each other so that we can grow and kind of snap out of ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure that brutally honest is the way we did it, because brutally kind of lends the idea that it was malicious with intent. I do think we've been extremely assertive at times, and I think that's really helped us grow. I think it's cool that we can look back on those times now. Like when you tell me that I said that, I vaguely remember it. Now I know you poignantly remember it. But it's just one of those things that kind of came out at the moment. So I don't know if it was courage or what created that sentence, but maybe it was just truth. Maybe it was just truth of the time. And that's what I went with.
Yeah, I think once you get to know people too on such a deep level, I mean, really, they say the two become one when you get married, and people argue that all the time. They're like, no, I'm still me and I'm still me. We are still our own people, but there's no doubt about it. After 19 years, we've been together for 22, I think, that we pick up on things. We know kind of what the other person's thinking or what their mood means. I mean, there's patterns that happen over that amount of time. And so I think it's beautiful to be able to, just work within those patterns and to confront each other at times, and then to just really be like, oh, this is one of those times where he's really proud of what he did. And I can, amp that up by just celebrating this with him, whether it's a promotion or, when you went on a hog hunt and killed a big hog. And I was like, oh, this is the point in the marriage where I'm supposed to get really, really excited for him and like ask him questions about like the type of gun he used and like how much blood there was and all this stuff. I'm going, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And so I did it.
So that's when you're supposed to be excited for me?
Right.
I love it.
But there are these things, I guess my point is like over the course of time, there's certain seasons of marriage that suck. They're not very fun. They might seem like dry patches, and we just don't hide that about our own marriage. We've been through those times. And I think, just leaning into that and trying to work on ourselves when we feel like we're disconnected from each other, and just trying to build up what we have control over in our own selves, working on virtue and just building up our character. It's helped us to stick together and to know that, like, as much as these low times really, hurt, you're going to come out on the other side eventually.
Yeah. Well, and I think everything in marriage revolves around the idea of communication. So the more that you communicate, whether it be the transactional stuff or the inner feeling stuff or whatever, right? That allows for those lows to get higher and the highs to get higher. I mean, I truly think that where we are with our marriage right now is probably a low spot in the rest of our life, right? Because we're continuing to work and communicate better now than we ever have, which means we're way better now than we were then. But I do look at it like the effort, the work that we put in to the communication side, making sure that we continually talk, whether I use fewer words than you do or not. I think that's the idea, is really, really work on the communication side of things. And that allows us to have more unity as parents, right? More unity as friends, more unity as husband and wife, more unity as Team Langdon, right? So when we have things that we got to do, I trust you because we've communicated over the last 22 years a lot. And there's things where I know that if I do go off the rails a little bit too far, you will bring me back, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part where I think the marriage is really awesome in the sense of where we are and where we're going.
Yeah. When you say that, I guess that makes me think back to, just that move that we made from Texas, like being deliberate and intentional about our communication, because it was such a big transition to move from one state to another and both give up our jobs and everything we knew for 10 years in Texas to go somewhere else. Like that was the starting point where we were intentional about our communication. And then it's just kind of blossomed from there, right? Like there were times when we were living here in Colorado when we just moved here that we were not meeting on Wednesday mornings for coffee to talk. We were not having a family meeting once a week. We were in the, day-to-day grind. You were going to the office. I was going to the office. We had kids in daycare and school. And, it was, just kind of fighting for your life on the daily basis, it felt like in some senses. And we weren't being intentional about our communication. And I think those were the times where we felt, kind of alone, and we felt the differences between us so dramatically. And so every time, it's interesting that you're talking about that, because as you're just sharing about communicating over the years, it makes me think, yeah, the times I've felt closest to you are the times where we have committed to one-on-one time together with each other on a consistent basis, and integrated date nights where we don't talk about, our finances and the fact that we're driving a car that has 200,000 miles on it. It's going to blow up any day. And we should really, make a decision about what we're going to get next and plan for that.
Yeah, we should communicate about that.
Yeah, we should. We got to put that on the whiteboard. But no, I mean, it's so true. Like people tell you got to prioritize your marriage, and it's hard when you have little kids and you're both working or whatever the case may be. It seems difficult or selfish or whatever to put yourselves, first in your family. But I've seen it time and time again, 20 years of doing counseling. The thing that, drives most couples apart is this lack of communication, and they prioritize their children over their marriage, and people don't feel satisfied any longer.
They don't feel heard. Because there's no one to listen to them, right? There's no one to talk to them about things. There's no one to cry with. There's no one to smile with. There's no one there.
That's right. And your kids aren't definitely doing that for you at that point.
No, the kids make me cry.
They're not constantly thanking you for mowing the lawn and putting the food on the table and going to the office. They're like, what else can we get out of these two humans? That's what they're doing.
Extract more from them.
Yeah. So I guess, if I had to go back to our younger selves and give us some advice, it'd be like, man, just keep that thing going. You had that family meeting going to move from Texas to Colorado. Like, don't stop that once you've moved. If that worked, that communication one day a week, keep going. I'm grateful to God that we got back on that track 5 years ago and have done over 200, family huddles, we call them now, because we have committed that that's something that has worked so well that we will not give that up. I'm grateful for that. But I think just that can't be emphasized enough, is just to really make sure that communication and intentional time together as a couple is on the calendar.
Yeah, it's simple. It's simple, but it's hard, right? And I think that's the thing that we do. If I may give us a little pat on the back, is I think that's something that we do, is we're intentional about it. Now our intentions wane, and sometimes we're not as intentional, but I do think that by spending those date nights and doing the things that we're quote unquote supposed to do, the reason that you're supposed to do them is because they actually do help. Yeah. Right? And so it's important for that.
Well, I just want to say that I have definitely seen you grow over the past 5 years, and not just in your waistband, baby. Not just in your waistband. I have seen you grow just in the way you take control in our relationship in a way that demonstrates, true leadership. And don't take control out of context, anyone who's listening. That's it's a very beautiful thing to have your spouse step up and serve you as a woman, and to serve your family in a way that everybody feels safe, because we have a leader and we have someone who is intentional about protecting us in all sorts of ways, not just, as a man, like physically protecting us or being cognizant of threats, but also just protecting us financially and protecting us intellectually, and sharing information that you hear on these great podcasts that you listen to, and just integrating a lot of what you've been reading about and listening to over the last 5 years. You've been a part of a group of men that are really trying to build up other men in the United States and beyond, and taking a very active role in those groups. And I think that has been very different from the past, where you've been trying to do things on your own, and you go to work and you come home, and you may talk to your dad or your brother every once in a while, but you really didn't have a group of men that you were, just kind of socializing with and networking with and being an accountability partner with and to. And so since you've been doing that, we've noticed a huge change in the way you show up for us, at home, the way you show up at your office for us. And then also just for me, like insisting that we go on date nights and insisting that we get away once a quarter and just have a night out at a hotel. Like, it's great for you to take that kind of role and that leadership. And I think I was waiting for it for a long time. So
I'm sure
I'm so glad for it. And who cares if it took 19 years or 16 years or whatever, I'm glad it has arrived. This is good. This is good. So
I'm slow to the train station, but I'll show up eventually.
He'll show up. Do you want to talk at all about that? Like just how you jumped into this group of men and you still meet with them on a weekly basis, and what that's done for you, or what even like spurred that on for you to join that in the first place?
It's interesting. I think it was a friend, or maybe it was my brother, that sent me a video from Sean Whalen. You remember that? There's a Sean Whalen video, and he was going crazy about taking personal responsibility. And I forgot who sent it. Now I really wish I remember who sent that to me, but they sent it to me. It's like, hey, you got to watch this. And I think at that point in time, I was probably in a mode of searching for my leadership, my internal leadership, not leading you, not leading the kids, but leading myself. And I think that video probably captured me a little bit and said, it's time for you to start doing what you're supposed to be doing. Not that I was doing anything wrong. It was just, the coast life, everything is good. Mm-hmm. And so I think that video is what started me out on just, a lot of people would call it the self-help journey. So I think that's, if we're going to call it something, let's call it that. I think that's what started me off on the self-help journey. And then Father Mike Schmitz, he did Bible in a Year 2 or 3 years ago. And just having something that you do every single day. I don't know if you remember me going through that. It was one of those things where accountability feels good. It feels good to do what you say you're going to do. It feels good to, keep the promise to yourself. Now, that Bible in a Year, I didn't listen to it every single day. And there was one time where it's almost like a week and a half behind. And it's like, well, instead of watching a movie, I was going to listen to that Bible in a Year a lot that day. But it was still, I was upholding a promise I made to myself, which was to finish it in a year. And I ended up finishing it in a year, just like it was, or within the confines of the year, if you will. And so I think that was probably the big thing that set me off. It wasn't the group, because then it was just a realization that I couldn't do it by myself, and I couldn't do it with you, and I couldn't do it with the kids. And
by it, you meant?
Talk about family leadership as a man. Talk about accountability. Have conversations about what I should and shouldn't be doing. Really talking to other people about failure as a man in a very masculine way, not just sharing feelings and stuff like that. But I think that came later, after some self-actualization, that I had work to do on myself to be a better person. Mm-hmm. that make sense?
Yeah.
So then when the group came around, that became kind of a staple in I have to show up. I have to show up not because my wife said so or my kids need new shoes or whatever. It was, this is an accountability situation where I've told someone I have to uphold what I've done or what I've said I'm going to do, not what what I said that I did. I know that sounds like a minor distinction, but I think it's important. And so that group was then part of the accountability that I think I needed as a man that you and the kids just can't provide, that one-on-one conversation as men that I think we need.
Yeah. And as you are talking about that, I was reminded of when our kids were pretty little and you would go to a men's group at church. And I remember there were times when I was just like, man, I need you home on this Friday morning to help me get the kids ready. And it was kind of a point of contention where I'm like, this feels so bad. I want to support him doing this, being with other men. I know it's good for him and it's not something that I can provide. And at the same time, like I need you here. So I felt like I couldn't really, ask for you to stay home, and I didn't want to interrupt what you had going on. So I think that was kind of a, point in our marriage where we were back and forth and things didn't feel great. But I guess for me, I wanted more for you to be part of that men's group and for me, find a way to kind of suck it up on those mornings when you were gone early and just do what I needed to do for the kids, because I knew ultimately that would pay off for all of us in the long run. And I knew you weren't just going there and shooting a breeze and having donuts, or.
Well, we had donuts.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
His waistline has grown 19 years, folks. Just kidding.
I think that goes to the point of a failure of communication. Like I wasn't communicating to you why that group was beneficial to the family, right? So this, in retrospect, we can now say, yes, it was a positive thing for me to be doing that. But in the moment, I failed in the sense of not communicating why this was a benefit to everyone. And so hopefully now that I know that, I can make a better job, or I can do a better job of communicating going forward, because I am going to go on like that hog hunt. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do things with other guys that are very exclusive away from the family and away from you. And so by communicating that now, that'll give you a chance to say, no, this is important. I can pick up the extra slack because he needs to do this. And then on the flip side, I also have to learn from that you'll need that time also, right?
Right. I do think that's something that we've had to learn over the years, is just how to emphasize that like this thing is different than the other things, right? Because there are a lot of meetups and social gatherings that we could go to or attend, and then all of a sudden we are out of alignment. We're not prioritizing our relationship. We're not prioritizing, our family life, and we're out and about and doing a lot of things. But some of them may not benefit our family in the way that we need them to. And so to your point, I do think, that communication and being able to say, okay, this is one of those times where I know this is going to cost a little bit more money, but this is why I think it's so important for me to do this, or whatever the case may be. This may cost me more time, and for you to have to, kind of pick up the slack while I'm gone or whatever. But like, this is why I want to do this. And also, I think when you say that, when we have to come to each other and kind of pitch this thing to the other person, it helps us too, to be able to go, how important really is this to me? Because if I can't defend this thing to my spouse, then it's probably something that I don't need to be doing right now. Like maybe not never, but just maybe not now. So I like that, just communicating, being assertive, and really making sure that the person knows what it means to you to be asking to do this.
Yeah. And I think we have to be aware internally, is what we are actually doing helping the family or not? I could go to Top Golf and go whack a bunch of balls and have a great time with a whole bunch of dudes and position it to myself that, yeah, this is for me so I can blow off some steam or whatever. But if I did that, during Annie's gymnastics tournament, or when you had to have some time alone to do podcast stuff or whatever, right? Then I might just be selfish.
Yes.
Right. And so that self-discovery, I think a lot of this has to do, communication has a lot to do with understanding and knowing yourself and being willing to put yourself out there, but also being willing to check yourself and understand that, yeah, if what I'm doing right now does not actually fit in with the vision of who I want to be. Mm-hmm. So.
Man, when you're young, 19 years ago on a wedding day, trying to figure out who we wanted to be and we thought we knew it all, then, and the 108-degree weather on wedding day when the mosquitoes were biting and the folks were coming down the alley with their rap music booming during our vows.
I don't remember any of that. I really don't.
It should have been a disaster. And we're here today, folks. So
we made it.
We made it. If you have been through any of what we've mentioned on this show, please just know that there is hope for you like there was for us. So I'm just glad that you came on the show, babe. I mean, 19 years is, it's a blessing. There's blessings and burdens all along the way. And I expect that for the next, 20 years or so and even more.
Well, highs will keep getting higher and lows will keep getting higher.
That's right.
It'll be a fun ride.
We're going with it. Guys, we just value family life. We value marriage here at Families of Character and want to provide you with just the raw, unapologetic, truth of what we've been through as a couple and as a family. So for more of this, check out our shop, check out our website, familiesofcharacter.com. We're developing a really exciting coaching program for parents. So I'm not supposed to leak anything out now, but I just couldn't keep it any longer. So
shh, don't tell anybody.
Right. Stay tuned for that. And also, if you're looking for things for your kids, how do you want to, raise kids of good character and, get them off screens for a little bit and get them sitting down with a good book or some worksheets that can help kind of draw out, what character is: honesty, integrity, responsibility, being personally accountable for themselves, and knowing what it means to forgive. Pick up a copy of our newest kids journal. It's called The Best Me I Can Be. And also, speaking of community, and Josh is part of a men's community, I am a part of many communities myself. Join our private Facebook group, the Thrive Community by Families of Character. Just go on to Facebook, search Thrive Community by Families of Character, and pop into that group so that we can support you and give you some wisdom and some advice and hear from you on what you're doing that's making your marriage and family life better. It's been a pleasure, babe.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Guys, we'll catch you on another episode of the Families of Character show. Take care.